Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander viewers are warned that the following program may contain images and voices of deceased persons.
Hi there, I'm Della Rani. Welcome to Talk About It. We're coming to you from Sydney, Australia. Here's what's coming up. We're celebrating Australia's rich Indigenous culture. From the famous,
"'Cause when you're standing there all alone, losing everything you've ever known,"
to the not so famous, Just Yet. Behind me is the Sydney Opera House, truly one of the most remarkable architectural feats of the 20th century. Now, Sydney is home to about 5 million people of all different backgrounds, and that includes about 100,000 Indigenous people that live here. They are Australia's first inhabitants. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders have lived here for at least 40,000 years. Some studies suggest many thousands of years longer, making Australia's Indigenous peoples the world's oldest surviving culture. In fact, their way of life was relatively unchanged until the 1770s, with the arrival of European settlers. Today, there are 670,000 people who identify as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander. That's about 3% of the total Australian population. About 57% of those live in or close to major city areas, while more than 20% are in remote or very remote areas. That compares to almost 90% of non-Indigenous Australians living in urban areas. Life expectancy for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander men is 69 years and 74 for women. That's almost 11 years less than non-Indigenous men and almost 10 less for women. Indigenous Australians still speak 145 languages of the more than 250 spoken before European settlement. And they remain custodians to some of the world's oldest and most breathtaking landscapes, such as Uluru. Australia has a poor track record when it comes to the treatment of its Indigenous peoples. Job opportunities are limited, life expectancy is much lower, and housing, healthcare and other benefits are often not easily accessible. And in one of the nation's most shameful episodes, which took place over many decades, many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children were forcibly taken from their parents and placed into state care. After many years of debate, in 2008, the Prime Minister of the day, Kevin Rudd, finally issued an apology to the people known as the Stolen Generation.
"We apologise for the laws and policies of successive parliaments and governments that have inflicted profound grief, suffering and loss on these our fellow Australians. We apologise especially for the removal of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children from their families, their communities and their country. For the pain, suffering and hurt of these stolen generations, their descendants and for their families left behind, we say sorry."
It was an apology that moved the nation, and it was a rare political event. The opposition leader of the day echoed Mr. Rudd's sentiments.
"Today, our nation crosses a threshold. We formally offer an apology. We say sorry to those Aboriginal people forcibly removed from their families through the first 7 decades of the 20th century."
So has life changed for Indigenous Australians since the apology? And what needs to be done to ensure Australia's Indigenous heritage flourishes? Let's find out. Do you think that life has changed for Indigenous Australians since Kevin Rudd's apology?
Not really. In a way, to some people it has, but in a way not to everyone else, because it was all more or less just for, I don't know, just for show. Wasn't really much. Wasn't really sorry.
What do you think needs to be done to ensure that Australia's Indigenous culture and heritage flourishes?
Give us all our land back. To be honest, give us our land back and give us all money and then we'll be right. Give us a treaty, really, to be honest.
Apology for stolen generation is one thing, but we still haven't resolved native title fully. We still haven't resolved sovereignty fully. There's a whole range of issues that need to be addressed.
What impact do you think Kevin Rudd's apology has had on the community?
It might have put some people in the right frame of mind, but I don't think it's been done a real lot.
How do you think we can ensure that the Indigenous heritage and the Indigenous culture flourishes?
Value it. Australia doesn't value its Indigenous culture.
We're at the Sony studios here in Sydney, and in just a few minutes, we're about to meet one of Australia's biggest pop stars. With more than 2 million record sales across Australia and a trophy cabinet full of awards, Jessica Mauboy is at the dizzying heights of pop stardom. And now she's about to go where no Australian-born artist has ever gone before, to the Eurovision Song Contest in Denmark in May. And in case you aren't familiar with Eurovision, here's a preview.
Tell me, how many times can we win and lose? How many times can we break the rules between us? Only teardrops. How many times do we have to fight? How many times do we get it right between us? Only teardrops. Only teardrops.
So let's go meet Australia's darling, Jessica Mauboy. Jessica Mauboy, welcome to Talk About It.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, Jess, first of all, massive congratulations on going to Eurovision.
I know it's huge. It's bigger than anything I expected. But yeah, I'm still shocked with the news. Yeah.
I mean, what was it like being the first Australian artist to really represent us at Eurovision?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite overwhelming when you think about it. You know, we have so much incredible talent. We have so many beautiful artists, and so I think being up there representing means a lot, and I feel very proud and very honoured.
I mean, I know you can't give away too much because we want it to be a surprise, but any clues?
It's an incredible and such an important moment, I guess, to me. You know, it's my biggest stage I've ever performed on. You know, I've always loved an upbeat song, and I've always seen, such a dramatic performances of some of the artists that come out of there that are just firing, with their gowns, their outfits, their makeup, so above and beyond, So I'm hoping to kind of create something like that, and but really infuse Australia, and giving that to the song and performance. Hopefully I can, come out with a bang. And
what has sort of been the road to success? What's that been like for you?
There's nothing like, having someone sing back a song of yours. Like you're in the crowd, you're seeing a sea of people, and they're singing your music back to you. They know every lyric, they know the inflections, the tone. That's the best part about what I do, is being able to create something that I can share and have somebody connect with.
I want to talk to you about your latest song, Never Be the Same. You wrote that, and it's a very personal story for you, isn't it?
Never Be the Same is something that just oozes in my soul, in my heart, and makes me feel real and more connected with the music that I write. But this particular moment, I guess, the album was so put together so fast, and I just come off the back of such an incredible film, The Sapphires. So my headspace, my vibe was still stuck in that Motown world. I was singing Sugar Pie and You Got to Know How to Pony, so such
beautiful.
Grunge and soul and just freestyling, that kind of music.
And you do come from a fairly musical family, but you also got a really interesting sort of cultural background, because your mum is Indigenous and your dad has Indonesian.
Yeah, culturally it plays a big part. Having the Indigenous side and growing up in a big Indigenous community, it's the way you speak and the way you connect, whether it be an eyebrow gesture. That's how we talk back at home. It's a bit of a nod, or it's a bit of an eyebrow, or a certain look with the eyes. My mum would always kind of, when we were in trouble, she'd give us the eyes, and that's when we knew to settle down, that we had to just zip up. And Dad, he was, having that Indonesian Timorese side, was so conservative, very coming from a Christian background, very respectful, and very reserved, so always, being humble and and giving back, you know. So best of both worlds that have kind of really created who I am.
Has it been important for you to reconnect with your indigenous roots, especially when you were making a film like The Sapphires?
Yeah, it was so important, you know, knowing that story and what these incredible women who are still living today, who are creating pathways for, you know, indigenous and non-indigenous. But I think, you know, you're no different, you know. So it's going back into the community and sharing this film with them. It was so inspiring because you had kids that were, you know, that don't watch TV every day but learn their own culture and their own language, look up on screen and see themselves on screen. It was so powerful to just see them just go, wow, that's me.
You've also done a bit of charity work, and I understand that you're the ambassador for the Yipirinya
Yeah.
school. I hope I'm saying that right.
Yipirinya, yeah.
And now that is a school which is an independent Indigenous school, and it has a lot of children that do come from very disadvantaged backgrounds.
Absolutely, yeah.
What's it like working with those kids?
It can be quite emotional sometimes because you understand, you hear of, you know, the situations that they've been in, and you want to help as much as possible, but there's only a small amount that you can do. And you know, for these kids, it's just been great, you know, being able to donate and give back to these kids and inspire them just by sitting there and singing a song with them and learning the ABC, learning the alphabet. You know, supporting and lifting them makes such a difference.
And you collaborated with other Indigenous kids to perform the first ever Australian song on Sesame Street.
I know. This is a bit of a moment for me. I mean, I've always, you know, as a young kid, like all Australian kids growing up watching Sesame Street, trying to get home as fast as you can to watch all the repeats. A dream come true.
Can you give us a sample of the song?
Yeah, so it goes, it goes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kangaroos, hop, 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 5 big red kangaroos. It's such a fun song.
Well, that was another Australian first right there, from Sesame Street to Eurovision.
Very first. Straight to Eurovision. Yeah, detour, hold up.
Well, before I let you go, I want to hear some more of you. So,
Yes, oh my goodness.
So can we hear, you know, a little bit of your latest single or whatever you want to leave us with?
All I can say is I'm just really thankful, you know, everyone that has been on my journey, who has helped me get to where I am. But not only that, just believe, you know, all it takes is to be able to believe in something and have hope, and, you know, you make it happen. We're all running in a crazy race,
Never thinking about the hearts we break. And as our home starts fading away, things are never gonna be the same.
losing everything you've ever known. You're staring at a different face. Things are never gonna be the same.
Beautiful. Now I have shivers. Jessica Mauboy, thank you so much for your time.
Always a pleasure.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
joining us. There's been recent debate in Australia over the government's proposed changes to the Racial Discrimination Act. The Attorney-General George Brandis says the current laws unreasonably restrict freedom of speech. But opponents, including senior Aboriginal leaders, are worried that changes to the law could lead to racial vilification.
Racism remains a major barrier to reconciliation and to achieving our vision of a just, equitable and reconciled Australia. So any moves to reduce the protection of my people and other Australians from the debilitating and undermining experiences of racial abuse and bigotry is an anthem to us. We ask very simply that our government provides us some protection from any deliberate and vicious defaming of our peoples and all of us across the nation.
Well, Mr. President, people do have a right to be bigots, you know. In a free country, people do have rights to say things that other people find offensive or insulting or bigoted.
So, what does the Australian public think? Let's go find out.
That shouldn't be allowed, like in Australia or anywhere else.
I think everybody have the right to say whatever they want without hurting other people and other feelings.
It's sort of contradicting in a way, because even though people have freedom of speech to say one thing, it's sort of not ethical or disrespectful to say it, even though like the laws said so.
Freedom of speech to a certain extent that you're not being discriminating against someone's heritage or tradition or culture. I don't think that's freedom of speech. That's just taking advantage of it.
It just doesn't, it's not peaceful. Yeah, it just doesn't sound right at all.
It will have a negative impact. You know, if someone's racist, how would you feel? If someone's racist to you, how would you feel?
In 2008, the Council of Australian Government launched an initiative called Closing the Gap, part of which focuses on the disadvantage facing Indigenous children in the Australian education system. According to the Indigenous Literacy Foundation, only 1 in 5 Indigenous children meet the minimum reading benchmark for English. But there is one school that's making a difference, and that is St Joseph's College. Joining me now to talk more about the program is the school's head of mission, Father Gavin Foster. Father Gavin, welcome to talk about it.
Thank you.
So Father Gavin, can you tell us a little bit more about St Joseph's Indigenous Education Partnership?
Yes. The program started with Brother Paul Huff in probably around 1998. He had this passion about looking after particularly Indigenous boys. Over 100 have come through the program in that time. But as you can imagine, just coming through the program from some of the backgrounds that they've come from is an amazing event.
And they come from all over Australia.
They come from all over Australia, yes.
Let's go meet some of the boys.
Hello.
I'm Del.
You're Ruby.
Kobe.
Hey Kobe.
I'm Lachlan.
Hey Lachlan. All right, let's go upstairs.
Too easy.
Thanks so much for joining us. Let me first ask you, what is your life here like?
It's great. Well, I've been here since year 7, and they have 2, and I'm in year 10 now, and it's opened up like so many opportunities.
Would you say your life here is very different to what it would have been like had you stayed on at school at home?
There's never really a dull moment, especially in the boarding. Like, you're always with your mates, and like those relationships grow stronger and stronger every year the more and more time you spend with each other. And then eventually when you end school and leave year 12, you have most of those mates for the rest of your life.
That's great. What about you, Kobe?
Yeah, well, it's a big change from where I grew up at. But after a while, you get into the routine and the pattern of how things go, and you settle in pretty easy.
Kobe, you are in year 12 and
Yeah.
will be leaving very soon.
Not long, eh?
What do you want to do once you leave?
I was focusing on getting the right ATAR and hoping that those results will lead to better opportunities and going to uni, maybe do something sport over there, physio or something like that, yeah.
I like journalism too. Like that's what I hope to study, like something like that. I like English, so and I do drama and performing arts, and so it's like a mixture of all that.
Lachlan, what about yourself?
Yeah, for sure I'd want to go to university, and then we'd go from there.
What's been the reaction of your parents?
Like very emotional, both proud, but like a few tears have been shed and sacrifice. Like I think it was in year 7, Mum wouldn't, I think I was in school having my first night. Mum was like parked down the road for about an hour or something after, crying. So, you all have those moments of tears and all that.
I mean, it would have been scary for your parents as well. You were talking about being scared on your first day. Can you imagine for them? What about you guys? What have your parents told you?
Yeah, they always tell me that they're so proud of me. Like, coming to Joey's, not knowing anyone, not knowing much about the school, and then just coming here and just putting in my best, taking every opportunity I get and just excelling wherever I can and being the best I can be.
I had an older brother in year 11. He didn't finish, and so I was pretty unsure whether or not I might go through with it. And my mum, she's just backed me up with that, and I've got a younger brother in year 9, and so that's she's just been so supportive with that and trying to get me through it and just continue. But the school also it's a great place to be, and I love it.
So, I mean, clearly, you guys have all had amazing opportunities being here, but how important is it for all 3 of you to recognise and hold on to your Indigenous culture and heritage? Is that something you guys take a lot of pride in as well?
Definitely. It's when I go home, it's Easter. So we have a festival, Easter festival, where I live, and I usually do an opening ceremony dance with my brothers and my little sister. And so, yeah, it's pretty important to keep the culture.
Me and a few other boys did a Aboriginal dance at the opening of the new Farrell Auditorium last year.
Can you play the didgeridoo, Lachlan?
I'm alright. I can't circular breathe, but I can do all the noises.
What about you, Kobe? Do you sort of hold on to your culture and traditions as well? Or?
Yeah, big time. It's pretty obvious. We're culturally different to a few other fellas here, but that the school provides us with the opportunities as well, and the connections with other boys across New South Wales, with meeting people, new people, new cultures, and learning more about our culture. But especially, we do, like you said, we do get given programs and opportunities and events where we can step up and show what our culture means and does, and show the whole school.
Well, you guys, it's just been such a pleasure meeting all of you. Thanks so much for joining us on Talk About It.
It's good, thanks Del.
Thank you, thanks for having us.
Art is a big part of Aboriginal culture, and storytelling features prominently in all forms of Aboriginal art. In fact, traditional art almost always has a mythological undertone relating to the Dreamtime. So, what is the Dreamtime and the significance of art to the Aboriginal culture? Let's go find out. I'm joined now by Elise Goldfinch. Elise, welcome to Talk About It.
Thank you for having me.
So Elise, can you tell us firstly, what is the Dreamtime?
Yeah, well, the Dreamtime was really about the mythology and the stories behind Indigenous culture and really how things came to be. So you had lots of stories to do with the creation of different animals, different land, how things became tribal law within the communities as well.
We actually have an art form here that sort of depicts a part of the Dreamtime. Can you tell us a bit more about this?
Absolutely. So this is called The Seven Sisters by an artist, she's still quite young, called Narula Possum, who's the granddaughter of a very, very famous artist, Clifford Possum. So her story is representing 7 sisters that you can see here, and then Orion in the corner. And the story began about these 7 sisters who were travelling around and hunting, and a hunter had spotted them and fell in love with all of them. And so he chased them around the landscape, around Australia, and they got so terrified that they ended up travelling up to the stars, and he followed them to the stars.
I think one thing that is really prominent that we see coming through a lot in different art forms is the sort of use of this dot style painting. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the dotting really began in the Papunyatula period of art, which was the 1970s. So there was a guy called Jeffrey Barden who was a teacher, and he was teaching in these communities in the Central Desert, and he would see these artists, or see these Indigenous people, and they were painting in sand, and they were telling their stories in sand, and then they would brush it away because it wasn't something that was meant to last. It was always an ephemeral art form. And he decided that he thought the works were so beautiful that they should be using them on canvas, or on using them visually, so that they could maintain and sustain their stories.
So we've talked about a piece of art that obviously reflects the Dreamtime. Let's just take a look around and, you know, look at some of the other pieces of artwork that you have here. There's a few here that you said are very similar, that have a similar story. Can you point those out and sort of tell us a bit about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So this piece here by Thomas Dupple-Jari is representing the Tingari cycles, and they're really crucial for the initiation ceremonies for young men, but they also represent the ancestral lands.
And Elise, what was interesting was you were saying earlier that this piece of artwork is actually very sort of saying the same story to these two on this wall over here. They all sort of, to somebody who doesn't know any better, they all look very different.
Yeah, they do, and it's important because each artist has their own artistic license.
We're looking at different forms of canvas art here, but we do have other Aboriginal artefacts.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a bit about that?
Well, this is an artist called Shane Harama, who lives around New South Wales actually, and this is a quinkin, a spirit, which you see depicted in rock paintings around the top end of the Northern Territory, around places like Yirrkala and in Arnhem Land.
And as we sort of continue to walk through the gallery, I want to talk to you about some of the threats that perhaps are facing Aboriginal art. Could you tell us about them?
Yeah, I suppose there are threats in terms of there are some artists that will be over-representing their pieces, and then once it's in the market, it can be sort of absorbed within that. And so the story becomes more and more meaningless sometimes because the images are becoming more and more depicted, and there is an issue with that as well. But I think the stories are so important that that's really almost an undercurrent, and it's something that distracts people from the story themselves and what they're trying to represent.
And before I let you go, look, I can't, leave without pointing out some of the beautiful didgeridoos you have here. So, how common is it to sort of find beautifully painted didgeridoos. Is that, again, a big part of the tradition?
Yeah, well, traditionally they were made in the top part of Arnhem Land, again, where the Quincan and where the rock painting was just really found. And then there were lots of other Indigenous communities that really loved them, and so they took the woods and took the idea and were actually using them in the Central Desert and further down. So you get these really, really beautiful ideas. In fact, all of these ones that you're seeing here are made, almost all of them are made in New South Wales, which is not a traditional space for them to be made. But they are all hollowed out by white ants, which eat the rot inside them during the wet period.
And is there a particular wood that's used?
It's all eucalyptus. The New South Wales-based woods are mallee. And then you get, like, the one in the middle here is a really beautiful wood called ironbark. And obviously they are musical instruments, so the value is about the way that they sound, the wood that's being used, the maker, like any other musical instrument. And the decorations are usually something that people enjoy.
Well, Elise, thank you so much for showing us around, and thanks for joining us on Talk About It.
Thank you for having me.
When it comes to Aboriginal music, it's not always a case of sticking with tradition. One group, known as Juki Mala, or the Chuki dancers, are mixing traditional with contemporary moves and adding a bit of humour along the way. Let's take a look. And that's all for this week's show. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. As always, we'd love for you to get in touch with us, and you can. Our details are on your screen below. Don't forget to use the hashtag #TalkAboutIt. I'm Della Rani. Thanks for your company. I'm signing out of Sydney. I'll see you next week.